sensitivity is not a weakness. It's a precious quality of the heart that shows your openness and your receptivity and your vulnerability to all life forms. And it will help you open up new gates, new dimension, and to allow to break free from the boundaries of the resistance of the logical mind. You know, that wall that most people put all the time, which is actually very common in men because they grew up so trained and conditioned with norms about how a man should behave in society. So in particular, so sensitivity is such a beautiful quality, and without it, it's hard to allow this energy of rising Kundalini and to start experiencing your divine presence. Now let me explain. I mean by sensitivity, I don't mean ego sensitivity, not at all, not ego sensitivity. It's very different. We're talking about the sensitivity of the beauty of who you are, at your soul, at your spirit, to break down those boundaries of the logic and the resistance, to allow this beautiful being that you are to experience everything as one, as your existence. In my experience, sensitivity is, I was saying, not ego boundary in the sense like someone come and disturb you and say something and really you get very disturbed and annoyed and you hold it and it's sensitive and you get defensive. No, I mean the beauty of who you are, that at the very core essence of who you are, of your divine presence, of Satchit Ananda, that you allow those gates of logic and resistance to break free. And because when you render yourself sensitive, you can feel. It's hard for people to feel, because if you feel too much and you get heartbroken, then it hurts, there's suffering. So most people live a life in a little shelf, and it's hard for them to allow their sensitivity to be in their nature. They close their heart. Are you one of those one also who maybe, perhaps like I did, had a major heartbreak at one point? A major heartbreak where you said, I'm never going to love again. That's it, that's the end. And sometimes it's unconscious too. You close your heart or you lost an animal companion, your beloved cat or your beloved dog, and you're so heartbroken. You say, I'm never going to love again. I'm never going to have an animal companion anymore because it hurts me too much. I suffer too much, and you close your heart. Has that happened to you? So I remember, I'll share with you a story. When I was a child, I had so many experiences, but in particular, the reason why I want to share this one was in Puerto Vallarta. I was with my ex-husband, we were in a vacation, and I got involved very much in feeding the animal and stray cats, and anything I could do, I would do out of compassion, out of wanting to make a difference and making a contribution. So that's when we found Puja. We rescued Puja from the street of Puerto Vallarta in Mexico. And the bellman, I think, told me about this cat who was on the property. They said, you should go check this cat. It's beautiful, it needs a home, because we were going to rescue Puja to bring her back home. And so I finally went one night, I looked for this cat. He was talking. He told me where she was, more or less, and I brought some food that night. So I walk around, we were just coming back from dinner, and I brought food with me. And I was looking for her and calling her, and then she just came out of the bushes. She was a beautiful gray, kind of blue cat with golden eyes, and she was fairly young, not even a year old. And it was full moon. There was a big moon. It was so beautiful. And it was late. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. And she kind of came out of the bush, but not completely. So I went into the bush and I went to meet her there. And there was a space there. And I fed her. And then I saw she had a big belly. And I thought, oh, I started caressing her. And I said, oh, you're pregnant. I thought maybe she was pregnant. And I fed her. And I felt such a sensitivity. I was so open to everything, all living form. And the experience I had that night was a complete state of samadhi. And I was just petting her, and there was something really so mystical and so beautiful about her, and so calm. And I wasn't sure if she was pregnant or she was sick, something was going on, because her belly was so big. And it was instant love affair. And I looked into her eyes, and the moon was reflecting in her eyes. And we were looking at each other. And in that moment, I went straight into samadhi. I completely lost everything, boundary, and I was one with her. And it was very mystical, because it was a similar samadhi I had experienced, where all boundaries were melted. And I was feeling an intoxication of bliss with her. And I spent many hours just there and looking at her in her eyes and caressing her. Finally, I went back to the room, and it was almost 4 o'clock when I went back. And my ex-husband said, "Where were you? I was alarmed. You disappeared. You were gone so long in the middle of the night." And I wanted to bring her with me back in the room. I wanted to adopt her. But the point is how open, because sensitivity, when you're open and receptive, it allowed you to be very, very sensitive. Again, sensitive to the beauty of your true nature, because it's our nature to feel everything as oneself. And that allowed it. If I did not have that deep sensitivity since I was a child, I would have never experienced such a state of samadhi. It was a very profound experience. And then I called her Isha. That night when I saw her, I called her Isha. As a matter of fact, this was before Sadhguru was in my life. I think I was with Guru Dev at the time, and I called her Isha. Isha from Sanskrit means of God. And we brought her to the hospital for her to be sterilized, and to have her a vaccine, because it was a requirement to bring her back to America, to California. And she got sick. I remember when I went back together, the doctor said that she had gotten sick, so I'm not sure if she would be good enough to travel. He said, "Why don't you leave her with us for another day?" We went back the following day, and we brought her with us. I didn't want to leave her behind. And as we were traveling on the plane, she was having a hard time breathing. And I could see something was wrong with her. And I told my ex-husband, I said, "Let's go to the pet emergency as soon as we get out of the plane, because it's too urgent. She's having a hard time breathing." So we went there straight, and when they looked at her, they had to put her onto the oxygen tank. and they did all kind of tests on her to come to realization, to conclusion that more than half of her lungs were eaten by worms, and there was no way that she could be rescued and bring her back to life. They did not know it was what caused that, but they knew something fundamentally was wrong with her lungs. They thought maybe fungi, they were not sure, but they could see from the X-ray her lungs were completely damaged. And so it was so devastating. And I had to make the decision to let her go. It was the best thing to do. And again, I asked to spend some time alone with her, and I looked straight in her eyes, and there was this beautiful sense again of complete merging of samadhi. And I told her one day we would be back again, and I let her go, and they had to euthanize her. It was very sad. I came back home, but what a powerful spiritual experience this was, mystical experience. It was profound because of my sensitivity. So sensitivity is not a weakness, that kind of sensitivity. I remember when I was a little girl, I never told my parents or anyone in the family because they would have thought that I was completely crazy. And I used to see this light coming. I would sit down, I would go into a state of samadhi, no thoughts, and I would just fixate on this light. It was like a lot of little movement, prana, moving and coming, and it was coming, and I would sit down and I would just fixate on it, and it would come closer and closer and closer, and then I would attain a complete state of stillness. Then this, whatever it was, I would do it with my eyes open. It would just explode within my being. It happened hundreds and hundreds of times. As I grew up as a child and as an adolescent, and it would turn, when it would come close to me, it would turn like an eye of a tiger. I would call it the eye of a tiger. It would be like white, yellow, orange, black, brown. It's hard to tell. It's a form, maybe it was a form of prana, but it was not all over. It was something I had never seen even today as an adult, and it went on for so many years. Because I was so open and so sensitive and so vulnerable to everything I was discovering, experiencing, and in such a state of wonderment that was happening. It was, I never wrote about it in my book because I wanted to share it in Becoming the Light program, because it's so sacred. And it went on for so many decades. Sitting and seeing that out of a sudden it would come of nowhere, and how it would come and it suddenly explode. As a matter of fact, it does happen today, but when my eyes are closed, when I meditate, in my third eye, but I don't see this whole spiraling of energy coming. I just see like the tiger eye. I call it the tiger eye for a lack of better word, but some kind of a light that just come up in my third eyes when it's fully activated. It has happened many times, especially when I meditate or I lay down in bed in Shavasana, and when I chant and I put complete awareness on my breath and I chant mentally and I fall asleep at night, it comes so strong. Once the Buddha said, your work is to discover the world, and when you do give yourself completely to it, what he really meant, and I meant Gautama, Siddhartha, Shakyamuni, the Buddha. He meant to discover the world within you being that is boundless, that is where the treasure are within your being. So see, sensitivity is not a weakness when it comes from your true nature. And it will allow you to break free from the gate of logic and resistance, and to be able to tap into other dimension and start experiencing your divine presence. Also, another story I want to share with you, when I was awakening, that was way before Sadhguru came in my life, and it was actually when I was with Gurudev, Sri Sri, His Holiness Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. I got very involved in helping the animal. And I took a program here in San Francisco with a non-profit organization. And it was like helping animal 101. Oh my God, it was so disturbing to my soul and spirit. What I've seen on those videos, all the cruelty and the slaughtering and the neglect and the farm factory and the fur factory, and oh, it had such a deep, deep, deep impact on my being. And because my being is so sensitive and I allowed that, I haven't closed the gate. I remember I forced myself to keep my eyes open and look, and I had a dear friend with me, and he was also with Gurudev, and he closed his eyes through the entire, he couldn't look, he was just too disturbed by everything. And oh, I mourned and grieved for months and months and months and months. And I remember I used to tell my ex-husband, I don't want to live in a world like that, a world of such duality where man chose the lower frequency of existence. And I was so disturbed and hurt by what I experienced, that mankind could be so cruel to other life form. And it was not in my consciousness, that it was such a shocking to my system. And I went into some kind of a mild depressive state I went on for probably over 6 months. And when I came out of it, it empowered me to a level that I became the voice for the voiceless. And I got very involved in helping the animal at all levels, and involved in the animal rights movement, and started going to Washington, D.C. and be a speaker, and even conduct ceremony for meditation at the open night ceremony. And at the most, at every level, feeding the cows in India, feeding the cats, which led, to meeting His Holiness the Dalai Lama. The point of this is, on my journey, the secret I'm sharing with you is not just sensitivity, it's also vulnerability. You break free and allow yourself to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is also a beautiful quality to have. One must break free from the gate of logic and resistance. If you don't render yourself vulnerable, how are you going to experience and be able to experience other dimension and experiencing your true divine nature? It's never going to happen. And vulnerability, again, it's not in reference to ego, but to your true being, your true nature. You see, there is a time in in life where protection is needed. It's like a seed that sprouts. The right amount of all nutrient needs to be there for that beautiful sprout to grow and become a mango tree. It needs protection. It's going to have all the different nutrients, the sunlight and the rain. Too much rain could destroy it, and too much sunlight could burn it, and or drawn too much rain could drown the poor little sprout. So, or too much weeds around it could completely destroy it too and suffocate that little sprout. So at certain time, it's necessary the right protection. Only you can know how much protection you need. But too much protection will prevent you from blossoming also. So as the sprout grows and start becoming a tree, and grow over the years and start flowering. Now, it needs to allow itself to flower, to blossom, for those mango to grow, right? It's the same thing with you being. You need to be able to have the discernment, viveka, what is the right amount of protection for you. So a blend of vulnerability and sensitivity coming from your true ultimate nature is the secret I want to share with you. To become mindful of it and see, am I protecting myself too much? We spoke about a broken heart. You know, a broken heart is the gateway to the divine. It will render you humble and to unique. And it could be the beginning of a phenomenal spiritual awakening. So allow yourself to be vulnerable. Allow yourself to be sensitive, to experience and blossom. And the third one is, I suffer a lot from that one. Deeply suffer for decades and decades. It's a sense of universal belongingness. What I mean by that, belonging, embrace everyone as yourself, be inclusive, experience, even though it's intellectually, but see the divine inhabit in every living being. And everyone in your entourage, wherever you go, it's your home. Embrace everyone. Include them. By including everyone as yourself or as the divine, you will start feeling you belong, because belongingness is not just about being in a tribe, being in a culture, or be in a socioeconomic background, or be in a certain religion or in a certain social club. Get rid of all those barriers, because those are all barriers. Personality is the biggest barrier. And wherever you go is your home. Embrace them. You will start feeling, know that planet Earth is your home. And you will feel, as you're involving yourself with everyone, everywhere, every life form on the planet, your life will become richer and more beautiful and more blissful and more joyous. And you will feel that you belong. What I realize on the spiritual path, without a sense of universal belongingness, it's hard to blossom. And it's hard to be joyous too, because it will be always a boundary, always an obstacle for you to break. When I grew up, as you know a little bit about my childhood, how dysfunctional and painful it was with my father. And I suffer so much from being alienated, not feeling love, not feeling that I belong in that family. I used to say, God made a mistake. They put me in the wrong family. And I was just a little child and I could not comprehend. I didn't feel like I had a family because everyone was gone already. They were all grown up and I was there going through the most difficult, painful stage of my mother's life at the time. And then as I grew up, when I fell in love with this being on this East Coast, which you know, that brought a major heartbreak. With these children, that was the same thing. The whole dynamic, I was feeling that I didn't belong. And it led me into a deep depression. That has been my experience. And I remember that sense of hopelessness and helplessness coming. And I felt like, this is not my home. I don't belong. I used to say that. I don't belong here. Universal belonging will become a gate for you to experience the beauty of you, divine presence. And it requires mindfulness for you to, as you go along on your journey, reflect on those things, do self-introspection and look back. How do you interact with people? Do you include them with an embrace, or do you exclude them like they're just a stranger? Because the truth is, the absolute truth, there is not such a thing as a stranger. We all interconnected, interdependent. It's the absolute truth, how we all are one. And when you merge and you break those boundaries, and when you go into samadhi, like I have shared in the previous voyage, you will experience what I mean, because words are just words. But at least intellectually you can understand that. So with diligence and self-effort and practice of mindfulness, see how you behave, and self-inquiry. Ask yourself those questions. Did you put yourself in a box? How long have you been living in a box? What caused you suffering? Do you include everyone in your entourage, wherever you go? Do you look at them deep in their eyes and see the divine in them? And little by little, you will start breaking those boundaries. Universal belongingness is such a beautiful gate to opening for you to blossom. So, sensitivity, not of ego, but of your true nature, is not a weakness. It's a precious quality to develop and nurture. Vulnerability is part of our true nature. It's a big boundary for a lot of people, especially people who have suffered a heartbreak. Losing a beloved one, either from a heartbreak or because your beloved one passed away, or maybe a beloved animal companion, all what we have discussed a little bit previously. So ask yourself this question: is it time now to come out of your cage and break free from those boundaries? Do you feel that song inside of you, your divinity calling for you? If so, then for your sadhana, go out now, look at it. Have I been protecting myself too much for too long? If so, maybe it's time for you to go out. And maybe it's time to find your divine sacred love now and entered in a true, beautiful love relationship. Maybe it's time for you to adopt and rescue a cat from the street or the shelter, and maybe a dog. Maybe it could be a different kind of animal companion, maybe a cow. So for sadhana, look back at your life. See how you have been living your life in that fabricated cage. We have been talking from the beginning of this program. Look at those three qualities. Some of the master might say differently, but I'm speaking from my own experience, from my own spiritual awakening and Kundalini ascension. If I would not have been vulnerable, and I would not have been sensitive and nurturing a sense of universal belongingness, I would not be where I am today talking to you. And that would not have happened. I would not be able to be here for you. And Kundalini ascension and my own spiritual ascension and awakening would have never happened, especially with Sadhguru. Break free from the ego identification, from your personality. So those are different experiences, sharing a few stories of that tiger eye that I experienced for so many decades. And I still see it today with my third eye, which is very clear that when I was a child, that because I was so open and receptive, it led to be so sensitive and so vulnerable. And I could experience that. And today, to be able to see it with my third eye, very powerfully, with my eyes closed, it's like a fire, kind of a, it's hard, no words can describe what it is. And in a state of samyama, in a state, what I mean samyama is a complete still mind, where the object and the subject merge as one. It's a mystical state, and yet it's not, because it's our true nature, it's absolute true nature. It's experiencing our divine presence. And then you saw also from the program I took, helping the animal, how I allowed it myself to feel the suffering of other beings and to experience that, how it empowered me in a huge manner, in a phenomenal way today to make a difference and make a contribution on earth. So can you. You can break all those boundaries. So for you, Sadhana, look back at all the things we have discussed and what I have shared with you. And look also what happened with Isha in Puerto Vallarta, how I had this beautiful, phenomenal experience of samadhi, where I experienced my Satchitananda, to be with her for hours and hours, just looking at her eyes. If I would not have broken those boundaries, like if you haven't, you're not going to make progress on the process, on the spiritual path. This has been my experience, especially with Gurudev and Sadhguru with all of them, with Gurudev and Sadhguru, but especially more with Sadhguru, because it's so easy for the mind to start judging and concluding and assumption. All of this will become a huge obstacle for you. So remember, a broken heart, even if once everyone goes through a broken heart at one point or the other on their life journey, don't let that stop you to grow and blossom. It's actually a blessing in some way. A broken heart will bring you to unity with deep humility, and the gateway will be broken. Sadhguru, the Shakti, the transmission, I would have never felt that. If my mind would have gone on thinking and judging and all that intellectually, and the logic and the resistance, it's impossible to blossom. So this is some of my secret on the spiritual path throughout my whole life. It's it's a wisdom that maybe few people have looked at it. Or maybe you would have thought, my God, this is a weakness. I am too sensitive. But there is a way to protect yourself. Ask yourself, is it ego that is being bruised and hurt? Or is really a sensitivity of the beauty of your true nature? So take the time in the coming week to continue your sadhana, everything that you have learned so far and you have realized. Keep writing in your journal and ask yourself those questions. Look back, look at, are you sensitive to other life form? Because being sensitive also, you don't want to cause suffering. Are you mindful that maybe you might be causing suffering to other living form, other human being, other living being? Ask yourself, how vulnerable are you? Are you open like the blue sky and receiving and experiencing your true divinity every moment? Or are you in that little cage right now that you're suffering and you want to break free from? So this is my experience, my realization, and the wisdom that I've acquired. So much more is to come in the next two voyages in the sacred of a yogini on the path. So take the time, do self-introspection and contemplate and write into your journal. And maybe it's time for you to come out of the cage. I'm here for you.